Good morning, everyone.
Morning.
Morning. Welcome back to F3 Faith Family Focus. I'm Faith Suggs. This is my dad, Shafer Suggs, and we are excited to bring you back to our live show this Friday, 9 a.m. of F3, sixth episode. Last week, we covered some fun things with recruiting, the do's and don'ts, and today we're going to dive into preparation and more of making of a champion. We are very, very lucky to have a new guest, Matt Miller, my personal trainer, close friend to our family. Matt, thanks for joining us.
Not a problem.
Welcome.
Thank you.
Today is going to be fun. We're going to bring our special guest. He's going to give us some fun inside looks. Matt Miller is a very, very, very important person to our family. Dad, why don't you dive into some of his background?
Well, he has a phenomenal background. And when I watched the two of you on his live cast when he was interviewing you, I got a little emotional because that was almost 10 years ago. And you both were very young. Yeah, obviously, you're a lot younger, but Matt, ambitious, confident. And I remember we were doing a workout, and I saw him over the corner, and he came up to me and just with confidence. And I think he knew who you were because I actually knew who he was once he mentioned his name. And he said that, and I'm sure that you're happy with what you're doing, but I'm watching Faith, and she has a lot of potential. And if you're open to it, I would love to work with her. And there was something about him that I saw immediately. His confidence, he wasn't intimidated by me. He just was, in our conversation, I immediately started thinking about, wait a minute, this is the kind of confidence that I'm looking for Faith. Because at that time, I think you were 13 or 14 years old, and I had pretty kind of tapped out on what I was able to teach you. Yeah. And I was also looking to become a dad and not a coach. And you told me yesterday, no, Dad, you couldn't teach me a crossover or in and out move or any of the kind of things that, I was pretty much a rebounder and physical basketball player. And it just, he became part of our family. And, we went from one gym to another. I think he probably had a dozen people that he was working with. And I was amazed by your progression. I think you were 12 or 13 years old, and I was amazed by the progression because he has you working with older girls. And but simultaneously, I began to hear how ambitious he was, and how he had a dream, of building something even more than what he was doing. And over those 10 years, we had many, many conversations about business, about his dream of having his own facility. Because we went from one facility to another. And it got to a point where we would go into facilities that had existing programs, and the parents were watching him work you out, or other girls working out, and they go, okay, we want some of that. And that created, some challenges for Matt. And Matt finally got to the point, you know what? And I remember we sit down numerous times to say, you know what, I want my own place. And you can look in the background of Matt. I don't know how large that facility is, but he went from the top stairs of a gym at Wheaton High School to this unbelievable dream. And I remember you were talking to him on your interview, and he has weight, he has track, he has everything, and I'm just so happy to watch his progress, and the fact that we are still a family, the fact that he has his own beautiful family. We were at his wedding, so it's just an honor, and I'm just so happy. Like I said, when I watched the two of you talk, because you were more like brother and sister, big brother and little sister, and he was able to give you something that I couldn't give you, and I'm very blessed to have him a part of our life and continue to be a part of our life.
Right.
Yeah.
And I would agree with you for sure. We started middle school all the way up to high school, right before I left for college, before the real world hit me, for sure. And my progression and skill set was from night and day. And I think the one thing that we really loved about Matt was the fact that we saw progress, we saw commitment, And then on that, we saw it grow while I was there. So we went from the high school, then we went to Supreme Courts, we were at IBA, and now you have
Right.
a facility. So it's pretty exciting, fun to be a part of for sure. Matt, we're really excited you joined us today. We're going to dive into some fun stuff. I know you have some great opinions on a lot of things, so we're going to touch on a lot of it today.
I'm usually not short of having opinions. So
Yeah.
for sure. I appreciate it, guys. Likewise. Likewise, likewise.
Yeah. So Matt, how'd you get into player development? What kind of drawed you to it in the beginning?
Um, Let me see. I think I was always kind of into it. I was the guy that the high school coach gave the camp to when I was a junior in high school. I was the guy that was in college that actually in the summertime, with college camps aren't always the funnest for the players during the summer, but I was the guy that really took it serious and was yelling at my teammates. Uh, and then I think me being a pro and going overseas gave me a lot of time just to think and kind of figure out what it was I wanted to do in life. I knew coaching wasn't really the lane in basketball I necessarily wanted to take at that time. I just loved being in the gym. I loved working because that's what I loved as a player. And I love being with kids. It's fun, it's a passion. So I think it was just kind of all along. I was grooming myself, and life was grooming me forward. And when I got done playing, I kind of jumped into it.
Yeah. Yeah, and that's pretty neat because as a player, not a lot of people want to coach. Not a lot of people want to get into it. I know in me now, in the area I am, it's kind of like eye opening to be on the other side of it because now I'm seeing all the things that drove other coaches crazy. Now it's driving me crazy. I'm like, why the heck did I do that? That type of
Yeah,
stuff. Like my mindset's completely different. How I watch the game is different. So I would
sure.
say it's a blessing to be on that side of the ball for sure. But one thing that we want to discuss today is how personal training, how one-on-one opportunities are now becoming bigger and bigger and bigger
Yeah.
in today's youth. And that's what we're gonna dive in a little later. But I know, Dad, him and I were talking last night, and I asked him. I said, "What do you think it was that had Matt push me so hard? Was there like a mutual agreement? Did you guys like meet up before practices to like be like, let's attack Faith today? Like, what did you see? What was it?"
There was a little bit of that actually. Shafer said you could do whatever you want to. Doesn't bother me. Send her back bruised up, messed up. We don't care. Your mom co-signed on that because I made sure that I checked with Mrs. Suggs first, so I wasn't getting my butt whooped. Um, it's I think with any coach, and Faith, you'll see this as a coach, and I'm sure you can agree. When you have players that actually want to be there, that
Uh-huh.
take your advice and then actually go home and do it,
Yeah.
and then come back better, it makes you more into it.
Right.
And that was the type of player that you were. You were obviously extremely talented, very athletic, but you wanted it, and that was something that was refreshing to work with. So it brought the best out of me. You know what I mean? And I wanted it as well. And it was a passion and everything. And that just makes a heck of a hard workout. Um, a
Yeah.
beautiful storm, I guess is the best way to say it. But it's great to work with players that actually want to work.
Yeah. Yeah. Understandable. And nowadays, I guess this is a question that came to you while you were talking. Nowadays, when you have kids who don't want it, but they're still coming to practices, they're still obviously it's parent motivated. How do you interact with that as a coach?
You always got to remember their kids. You know what I mean? Like you guys taught me so much as I was going through this whole thing, right?
Right.
You don't get better at this in a book, man. You get better live in action, working with players, and really actually being in the moment and focusing. And so you start to realize and give space to, and understanding that you know that sport is such a small portion of their life. It's everything to me. Those 60 minutes, those 90 minutes are my whole world and my career and my passion and my hobby and everything. But for kids, they had school, they got to go home eat dinner, they have other activities. So
Yeah.
you really start to understand like that they're children, man. Back off. You know what I mean? Everybody doesn't get it at every level at some high level right away.
Right.
That doesn't have to be a rite of passage in order to work with somebody. You
Right.
know what I mean? And so you just start learning to do that. It's not anybody who doesn't want to be there with us just won't come back.
Yeah.
So our workouts are a little bit too intense, they're a little bit too hard for anybody who just literally does not like it. They
Right.
won't ever come back. But generally, we don't have that. I mean, kids are kids, and we've learned how to be appropriate too. And that's a big thing that I had to learn personally. Um, you have to be appropriate. You can't go in at a college level with a second grader. That's going to turn them off of the sport. But part
Okay.
of my job is to teach kids how to love the sport.
Yeah.
They're not going to love it when they're coming in, but they're children, so they're not supposed to. So
Yeah.
our job as coaches and trainers are to teach them and instill some love into the game, and that has to do with being appropriate and learning when to push, when to back off, and you got to learn to play. If you were a kid that I could push really, really hard, you know
Right.
what I mean, and that's great. There were some kids that couldn't at your age, but by the time you guys were junior, seniors, we could. Like so, you just got to really not mass generalize. I guess is the
Right.
best way to put it.
Yeah. And one thing I while you're talking, I'm just thinking is through my whole process, we always were push, push, push. But I think there were always parts of creative strands in there where we all like I remember when we was only like 12 of us going or 13 of us going that day. And towards the end of it, we would jump into one-on-ones or we would jump into you would throw some random move that I had never seen before at us. How important is creativity at the young age, especially now when kids
It's,
are watching players
it's
like
a
Steph?
game. I think people forget about that with all the strategy and the X's and O's and all that. When you're designing the strategy, that is creativity.
Right.
And that's where I don't like it with coaches that you put it in a box like, oh, well, don't do this. But flex was a crazy revolutionary thought at one point in basketball. I mean, to shoot a three
Yeah.
pointer was a real big thought at one point in basketball. So
Right.
it's a game. It's meant to be creative. I have to fight that now in my old age with some new moves. Like, no, we don't do that stuff. And so I hear myself turning into the old coach. But I always have to remember it's the creativity also makes it fun.
Yeah.
And at the end of the day, if kids aren't having fun, they don't know. Nobody wants to do anything if they're not having fun with it.
Exactly.
Generally working through something's okay, but loosening it up, having a little mental break, throwing ones in there, some creative moves is always something that players enjoy.
Yeah. And I think that the more creative and the more fun it becomes, the more ownership becomes easy. Um, and I always talk about like the big switch when kids decide when they want to push, 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 when they want to go to the next level, when they can see in the future. When do you really see that switch? Is it younger in some kids, or it just depends?
It really just depends.
Yeah.
You probably don't want that switch to happen until later.
Right.
Because then you kind of tap out. Because when it does happen, and that switch is when everything gets real serious and all that stuff. But that's maneuvering through life. I think people just try to compartmentalize the athlete from the human, and you can't do that. Man. Like, kids are going to want to go skateboard all of a sudden. They're going to want to go try this all of a sudden. That's part of being a person and a human. So you have to leave space for all of that stuff along an athlete's journey. And that comes from parents and trainers have to be able to reinforce what's going on at home. You know what I mean? We get you for 90 minutes. We get you for 4 hours a week. That's not your life. You know what I mean? So if that's not being reinforced by mom and dad and all that stuff, that's really the big thing that prolongs the switch from happening, if that's possible to say, right? So with each kid, it's different. You could see it earlier in some though, like yeah, we call it the ingredients. You know what I mean? Like a little bit of mom's got to be right, dad's got to be right. You know what I mean? The kids got to be right, and you got to just keep on mixing that and bringing them on. But I always say around 8th to 9th grade because kids start to really realize what's going on. They can see where they're at in pecking orders in their little groups on their teams.
Yeah.
And that's when I think they should probably start pulling this thing and not being pulled anymore. But when you're in 6th grade, you don't know what you like and what you don't like. You're trying different things and you should. But once we start getting into high school, that's when some decisions need to start being made, and I think athletes need to start pulling in. That's when the switch, starts to kind of happen.
Yeah, and I think the one thing that's great about that, I feel like the switch came to us because as soon as we met you, we wanted to go full steam. And I think that was great because I was kind of in that middle school area and I was still starting to see that I was getting better and better and better. But I think that one thing that really helped, and I think this is what's fun about one-on-one training and like personalized things, is when you can form a relationship with someone. And when you have that relationship with someone, it's easier to grasp and understand and kind of like think through things because you're like, okay, so and so said this, did this, and then it's different than if I go home, coach says this at high school, but you don't really have that relationship with coach from high school. It's different when it's a one-on-one, the effort's put in, you do your research, you see what's happening in the game, and you present it to me. That's so different. How important is that personal relationship that you form with all your kids now that you have so many walking through the door?
Yeah, I mean, huge.
Yeah.
It's more difficult, I'd say, but it's not impossible. I mean, the one that does it the best here is Bobby. You know what I mean? Like it'd be 100 kids walking in summer camp on Monday. By Tuesday, he knows everybody by their name, and that's something that's very simple. In that, just when a kid comes, do you know their name? Like learn about them, because if I'm going to help you, eventually this thing is going to go more mental than physical. And so if I really don't know the things that make you move and can press different buttons. If I can't get inside your head, I really can't help you mentally. At a certain point, the game is going to turn mental. Like everybody's going to meet their match. They're going to meet somebody who's just as tall, just as athletic, just as skilled. So now,
Right.
if you don't have the mental toughness to kind of deal with some of those things on the court specifically, then I consider it that we failed you. So you have to get up in your head. But that only comes with relationships, because the player has to trust you. You don't earn that trust. I always say that to anybody that works here that's brand new. I have to humble myself to a fourth grader every single year. And I'm the owner, and I was a pro, and all this other stuff. But that kid doesn't know me and doesn't care. So if I don't gain that child's trust, I can't teach him anything.
Right.
So before you go in there yelling and screaming at them, you got to get them to like you. You got to know, they have to know you care about them, and that has to be genuine. And I think that's something that we do and that I did, and it works. Right?
Right. And we're talking player development, we're talking all these things. I think that in today's society, youth sports, like I said before, is so one-on-one personal training, extra effort put out there in comparison to dad, your time period. Like what do you see in a difference?
It's like night and day. Talk about humbling myself, because it wasn't a part of our development. I mean, of course, a long, long time ago, and I remember initially talking to Matt. It was kind of hard for him to relate. I mean, because I was just closer in age to his dad, so it was very, very different. There was no player development. So if you got to a point where you were getting better, and where I couldn't teach you other than yelling at you and making you work hard, I knew that I needed a second voice.
Mm-hmm.
And it was just about that time, 2012, 2013. And, these individualized specialist coaches, not only basketball coaches, but, personal trainers, because we work with a guy, Matt, was it who was
RW,
yeah, RW, right? So not only strengthening agility, mental, psychological stuff. It's a way of life now. Where obviously I had to learn. You remember again, I was learning on the way.
Right.
And I learned a lot from Matt as he progressed, because we talked a lot. He talked to other parents, and he really kind of helped me see the value in the importance of one-on-one, not just basketball wise, but life skills wise, right? There's something about someone who's played the game at the highest level that if he has the skill set and talent to translate that to a 12 or 13, 14-year-old kid, or a third, fourth, fifth, a lot of that, what you've done a really good job, Matt, is educating the parents about expectation. So it is so different. I had humbled myself, but I tell you now with Devin, and Devin has a quarterback coach. He has a strength coach. So it's very, very different. And I think families out there, when you look at what's available out there, I look at Matt. I look at your facility now. It's what's your dream, all in one. Everything is there, right? So you have that same cultural message from not only the type of offense that you run in, but the way that you develop your body, the way that you eat. Okay, the whole cultural thing, which is an awesome thing. So very, very different, and I'm just really happy that we're at this place where parents can have those options. I would just caution parents to do your homework, because there's a lot of people out there that won't have. It's all about them. What's in it for them, and with your program, because I knew you when we walked into a gym with 2 or 3 people. You're training 12 people. Now you're training thousands of people, right? So just do your, but it's very different, and I would really ask people to really consider doing that one-on-one training.
Yeah, and I think that's a really great point that you just finished up with was because personal training and because one-on-one work is so popular now, everybody's a trainer. Everybody's someone who works with somebody. Everybody, and now especially with everything that's going on with coronavirus and the kids are all home in quarantine, now everybody's putting out a virtual training session. Now everybody's doing this, this, and this. Matt, how would you tell when you advise parents and players or families that come through your doors? How would you advise them to navigate these added necessities?
let, let me plug in my charger first before I answer this question. Give me 2 seconds.
That's a great point.
Yeah, that.
Because there is endless amount. I mean, how many trainers do you?
Oh my God! And everybody. I'm still getting emails solicitation from when you played. You know.
Yeah, I mean, I have a much softer opinion now because I've been in this a long time now.
Right.
I've been in player development for probably 15 years, going on 11 years, with my own company, right? So my opinions have changed dramatically as you go through it, and I have just a lot more understanding now than I used to. Right? Generally speaking, a lot of people that at least played some ball, probably high school, but I'll just go with the college level, always are going to try basketball in some capacity,
Right.
right? They're gonna try being a coach, they're gonna try being a trainer. You're going to do something in that sport, right? We're talking about specifically basketball. So then from there, it starts to just be how serious they take it, because I mean, I've listed out steps of trainers that they'll go through. In your first phase, you're just kind of regurgitation. You're just going to regurgitate everything that you were taught from whoever taught you.
Uh-huh.
Then you kind of move into kind of forming your own philosophy, right? Of learning from what you're doing and taking it a different way and making these different adjustments, right? But at a certain point, unfortunately, it does start to turn into more business if you're going to stay in it because you can't dissect the human from the athlete. You can't dissect life from the trainer. Like, you
Mm-hmm.
know, hey, I ended up having a family. You know what I mean? Hey, I got to pay some rent. Hey, real life things start to happen. So at that point, if you can't have a philosophy and replicate yourself, then you start to fizzle out, right? Because something's going to take that place in that time in that space, right? So yeah, I see a lot of trainers. I see a lot of stuff they're doing. I don't. I kind of take a different position now. Like a lot of them, I wish they'd reach out to me and call me.
Yeah.
And like I did build this from scratch. I didn't work for something else, and then I moved back home after being gone for 9 years, right? And so every step that you can take. I mean, I slept in the gym literally when I was first doing this because I finished the workout at 1 in the morning, had to be back at 8. Like it just wasn't any point. Go get some food and go. I mean, I slept at IBA. Like so. I mean, I did these things. So anything and any challenge you're going to go through, I probably went through, right? And so I leave a little bit more space than I used to with other trainers now. I mean, look, everybody's trying to help some kids out. The biggest thing that I would always say, or the biggest advice I could give, is training has to translate. Because at the end of the day, it's got to translate. The reason why you're doing basketball skill development is for the game.
Right.
Is to see it in the game. So if you're not working on things that are going to translate, then it's maybe not the best thing. Besides the creativity and having some fun, but as long as you have a purpose for what you're doing, I'm okay with it. It's my best opinion on that now.
Well, yeah, that's great. I mean, it's endless. It's a great thing to have because there's constant amount of resources for kids and
Sure.
family. But it's almost this becoming the moment you get so decisive you can't even pick a trainer. You can't even pick. So at the point you might as well go dribble out in the backyard. At that point,
Well, you got to find out what works for you as a family.
right?
You got to find that person, that organization that you trust, and you ride that horse as long as you can.
Mm-hmm.
As long as you're continuing to see development, continue to work with the person. If you're not, and again, it's not about that. Oh, they couldn't do this dribbling drill, and now they can, right? And mind you, this is the same fire I rake our company over and my staff over, and how I judge us completely, right? It's not about that they could do this drill now and they couldn't. That's one phase of it. But literally, if they are not showing any progression in the game, I don't care what drill you couldn't do, and now I taught you how to do it. You're not doing anything different in the game. And the reason why you're doing this stuff, the reason parents are investing in this, yes, there's the life skills portion of it. I get all that, and that is completely 100% important. But you need to see it in the game. That's the whole reason, right? And so I never put me above the game, right? I never put me above your high school coach because, dude, you're here with me so you can be better in the game. That's the whole reason that you're here. So everything I'm doing has to be driven towards that, and training's got to translate. So that's just a way to kind of decipher through it, right? If you're not seeing anything in the game, that's the biggest test for everybody, right? It's the game. That's why you're doing it. That's why you play. You know, you're not playing just to shoot 100 shots in the driveway. Like, that's cool, but for what? Right? Because you want to make a shot in the game, right? And that's fine. That's the purpose of a sport, right? So I would just use that as one of the standards to know and to continue with somebody or not.
Right.
Hey, I can remember when you would come watch Faith play and how we would sit together, and to kind of validate what you just said, we would sit together and understand that she's playing high school ball, understand she's still developing, but how you would take those moments, what you saw out there, and get her back in the gym, right, and go through that and get her to understand. So that's what I experienced, and I know that you've had many, many, many kids go through your program. And not every kid's going to go play high school ball. Not every kid's going to play D1 basketball. But what you were able to do is sit down, and it really helped me because I learned from you. I mean, the only thing that I took credit for were spin move, and I remember that I wasn't the spin move. It was her mom putting her in ballet that taught her the spin move, right? So I basically didn't, but it was really nice for you to be able to help her translate what she was learning from you into her game. And that was the real progression that I saw. And she was attentive. She just was like a vessel. And it was just a really great thing to see.
That's the exciting thing for a player, though, right? Like, wow, I worked on this, and it actually happened in the game, and it worked, right? But then what that does is gain more trust. You know what I mean? That gains more credibility. They're more open. They want to come back and work. It's more fun. You can challenge them more. You can push them harder.
Right.
But you have to use the game as the ultimate test. And then that's what you then go back and say, all right, now, hey, this is where you could have used that move.
Yeah.
Go over it now. So now we're working on real stuff that's actually going to happen, and you can actually help, because it always ends up being this kind of, not so much anymore, but I've seen the progression of the fight between the high school coach and the AAU coach, and then the new fight is the trainer and the AAU coach, or the trainer and the high school coach. Like, so you see all these different little battles that have happened. I've seen this stuff through my career, but at the end of the day, and I'm just trying to help, right? If you can be productive on the court, that's going to help your team. Yes, there's a lot of stuff that has to do with you being productive with the ball in your hands, but if you're not helping them learn, and then when somebody else comes up pass, you're also failing them too, right? Like, you got to really understand the whole game and help them with that.
Right. The only thing you gave me credit for was whenever she had a flagrant foul in the game.
That was you, bro. That wasn't me. That was always you. That was elbows and all that stuff. That was you, man. That was not me.
So all that NFL mentality, you always
all you.
I don't remember any of this, to be honest with you.
I got a bunch of them stories. I remember.
I think, and y'all are both talking about something really great, because I used to love when Matt used to come to games, because I knew that no matter how well I did in the game or how bad I did in the game, there was always going to be something that I could have done better, but also something I can learn from. So through this whole process, that's great when you can play for travel teams and you can play for your high school teams, and you're getting you're learning kind of like the team aspect of things, but what you're missing is that individual focused development on your game and how to understand how your growth is. And the more I spent with Matt, was the more time, like when it was one-on-one, was understanding the game. And I think that I'm really great understanding the game now, and I went into the next level understanding the game, understanding, that cut should have happened, that thing should have happened, and I was way ahead of a lot of kids. A lot of kids also take from personal training just the reps, just like the in-moment workouts, and compared to, we used to talk through the workouts. We used to talk about, why would I do that? Because I feel like I used to ask a lot, why would I do that? Because of this, and this. If the defender jumps off on this side, That's why you would do that. And for me, that's me seeing it because I used to just sit there. I don't know if we were talking about this the other day when we were on the Instagram Live. I would just like sit there and kind of picture it all because for me, maybe I'm more analytical than other people, but I really wanted to see like why would I make this decision so that in the game, in that moment, that's why I made that decision. And that was what I really took away from this one-on-one attention in a way, for
Yeah,
sure.
but that starts being, that's the tough journey of being in development.
Yep.
Where you have to move away from just doing the tones, and you have to start understanding why are we doing the tones and why
Mm-hmm.
are we doing these things. And for me, I had to step back and just challenge everything that I was taught so that I could teach it better. Like if I'm going to be the one that's the authority figure and I'm going to take on and lead a family through this, I need to be able to at least back what I'm teaching down to like a left right step into a jump stop
Right.
to a right-handed person. Like I mean, I had to go back and challenge every single thing that I was taught, and not to come up with something new, but just to understand what was the purpose and why are we doing it. So
Right.
then the explanation becomes more driven through why more than the what and the how.
Mm-hmm.
So now why are you doing this? Because this happened in this situation, but that I was a point guard, so everything was all IQ for me anyway on how I saw the game. So uh, yeah, you got to really help these kids out. They want to know why.
Yeah. And I think that that's one of the great things about now why it's so popular for one-on-one development to happen because Matt, what's your opinion on AAU? Do you run basketball?
It's changed now because I have a AAU program.
I know.
Um,
I know.
you know what? I'll be honest. I don't have a problem with it, but I also can control it now.
Right.
And that was a big thing for me was there were certain things that I didn't like about it.
Right.
But um, some things that I learned through it, like, oh, I thought I could get in there and just make a practice all skill based and all that, and then got out there and somebody put a diamond press on us and we couldn't figure it out. And I was like, oh, all right, so we can't just do skill and practice. That's not going to work, right? So you start to learn how to find that balance, and you start to learn the complete picture of development. Really ends up being a partnership between all the entities, right? Like everybody's got to really work together for the good of these kids because there's different strengths that everybody's going to need to bring because the trainer cannot teach a diamond press, you know what I mean? But that is something that is important. How to break a 2-3 zone is important. How to play and move without the ball and space the court individually is important. How to play without, but you need other people there to do that, right? And you can never replicate the game, right? The pressure of the game, all those types of things. You do as best as you can, but man, the game presents chaos, right? And so you can try to replicate that as much as you can, but you need a team for that,
Yeah.
right? I need a team to show what I can do as a trainer, right? I have to have that platform that the player can show what they can do. So in regards to AAU, man, it's really, it used to be a necessary evil. It used to be a thorn in people's side. It used to be all that stuff, but at this point, it's fun, exciting, and it's where it's at now. You know
Mm.
what I mean? Like it could come with its good and its bad. I get that, but everything does. So you
Right.
can't just say that this does it doesn't. I mean, like it is where it's at. You know what I mean? And if you're trying to play some really good competition, or if you're trying to get different competition, right? If you want a little freer style, maybe like all of those different things are important.
Yeah.
So I don't have a bad opinion of it. I'm cool with it. I think you still need the development portion of it,
Right.
and I
Right.
think you need to balance out your games towards development as you continue to grow and grow.
Well, I think that I brought that up because maybe two shows ago we talked about the burnout.
Mm-hmm.
And you got AAU, you got high school, you got preseason, postseason workouts, you got one-on-one development, you got a lot of kids doing strength training. Not only that, but school. How do you tell parents when they're over programming, but you still know you want their kids to develop? You know what I'm saying? Like, how do you tell them like, okay,
I
hold on a
always,
second?
I mean, I had to do that with. You remember Emily Eshu? I had to do that with her. She never would get out of the gym ever. You know what I mean? But there were times where I had to say, I won't work with your kid. You know what I mean? And go hide the basketball. I'm not. You can call me as many times as you want to. I'm not going to work with her because that's not what's best for her. That
Right.
would have been what's best for me financially. You know what I mean? But that's not what's best for her. And then you start to, it leads to your body breaking down and all this stuff. So for us, I have to set up programming and options within our programming that help with that. right? Meaning that our schedules for example, like our 15s and 16s stop the second weekend of July. Doesn't matter how good you are or not, because then I know I'm at least giving you 2 to 3 weeks off before our fall academy starts.
Right.
So I have to program in a way that it's not an option for parents, because they will just go because everybody's kind of frantic and everybody's doing it and you want the best for your kid. It's all out of doing things the best way, but somebody has to be the air quote adult in the situation and say, no, at this point, they have to stop.
Right.
You know what I mean? They cannot do anything. Like we don't have, our practices probably start earlier than most programs in the spring, but that's still giving a week or two off,
Okay.
right? So I have it planned out where kids have to take some time out. And we always tell them, stop, hide the basketball. You know what I mean? When you're off, you need to be off. Your body needs to be covered. You don't get bigger in the weight room by just constantly lifting. You get bigger in the recovery stage, right? So that's something that has to happen. You need a mental break.
Yeah.
So I had to figure that into our whole program so that it's not just go, 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 because there is no off season anymore. It did used to be the summertime. Now it's more into the fall, right? But for us in the fall, we don't play any
All
teams.
year round.
Yeah.
We go ahead and we train. But if you look at it more globally, and I always said this, and this is what gave me a softer opinion on it, they're playing soccer full time in Europe.
Right.
You know, what I mean, that's they're going. So it's an American philosophy of playing multiple sports, of doing this, that, and third. So you just have to kind of figure it out on what's comfortable for you. But ultimately, there's some science behind it. You can't keep on pounding on your body, pounding on your body, pounding on your body. When you're growing and developing, you're going to get injured, right? So that's why we have the weight room. That's why we encourage the players to be in there. Healthy body breaks down less, but I have to put in hard stops.
Right.
But at a certain point, when it's 17, I can care less, man. You got to go. Like,
Right.
there's
Right.
no time, there's no stopping now. Like, you got to go now. We got to push this thing all the way through July. We're coming right back. This your last year playing high school ball. Like, there's no stopping at this point. So when you're younger, we need to put some hard stops in there to help.
Right. Yeah. And I think one thing that I've noticed with my brother, now that he's 18 and he finished his final season of football, he's like, I don't want to do anything. Like, remember that day? Like, he's like, I want to sit
Right.
around. I want to rest. I want this. And I told him, I said, go ahead and get your rest, because I had to be the mediator. So I was like, go ahead and get your rest, because I'm letting you know in July you don't get rest ever again for free at the end of the day.
Right.
Yeah, I
Off
mean,
days and
with
off
our
days.
seniors, with everything, I mean, I wouldn't work with you or any of them after the season until
Right.
almost close to prom.
Right.
Because I always say, like, go be a senior, go be on that joyride, go have some fun. You don't need to start working a week after the season.
Right.
We need to take a whole month off. Come back and see me when you're out of shape and frustrated, but go be a kid.
Yeah.
Because when you get to June, for us in basketball, like, it's over. Like, you're being a college athlete, that's it now. Like, this is what you're doing, it's what you're signing up for now, right? And so you got to be smart when you go.
Yeah. And yeah, you do. And we touched on that a little bit, and we touched on the switch, which are all pretty cool things. But when it comes to older kids, what kids do you know have it, and what kids do you know they're just there, kind of be there?
That fizzles out
Mm.
as you get older, or at least the reasoning of why you're doing it becomes more clear.
Yeah.
Like, life is undefeated. In fourth grade, everybody can be LeBron and Maya Moore and all that stuff, right? But all of a sudden, you get to sophomore, junior year, you start to realize, like, maybe not so much, right? And so, the reasons why certain athletes do it versus some don't. I mean, I think the crazy kid or crazy parent is a bad rap, as if that's the majority, and it's not. It's a small percentage that think their kid is so much better than they are by the time they get out. Like, they ain't that, because it's very obvious that you're not. You know what I mean? So it starts to just be facts of life kind of thing. You know what I mean? There are a percentage that, yeah, the coach might screw you over, that happens, right? But the majority, as you get older, it starts to reveal itself, and a coach don't have to tell you that. You know what I mean? You're not as fast, you're not as athletic, or you're just plain out simply not as good. I mean, just because you have done a lot of things, I could study engineering all I want to. I'm probably not going to be as good as this other person, right? So it's just kind of life. That's the journey that it comes with. Those are the challenges that it brings with it. So it kind of fizzles itself out. You know what I mean? I don't. That's not something that it's the most heartbreaking thing. I will tell you that when I have caught that email from parents and they said, you know what, this is the end. We're not going to try out senior year. Thank you for everything that you've done, but you know what, he's going to put his time more into this kind of thing to start preparing for college. Honestly, it is literally the biggest moment where I feel like I failed, but I understand the reality of it. Like, it's probably the best decision for this kid's time. It sucks, but that's part of the game that we play.
Right. Well, one thing that me and you covered on Instagram Live was, and something that as a young adult I'm trying to dive into, is entrepreneurship.
Ooh,
Um,
deep waters.
how we gonna pull it together? But like as people
Okay.
can see, you have your 6 court facility with your turf and your weight room and all the luxury things. All you're missing is a pool. How?
Never good enough, right? Thanks, Ray.
When did this dream start to be something you really could see?
2014,
Okay.
um, I started to see what was happening. You know, like, wow, there's more people that keep on coming.
Hmm.
Uh, and that's when I started to kind of analyze the business, not just the players anymore. Like, what does this look like long term? You know what I mean? This is starting to be something that can not just be a career for myself, but also could be a career for staff that I have. I at that time being had just hired 2 full-time employees. Like,
Right.
all of a sudden, it started to become something for real. Uh, and so I had to start learning things and studying things and not working in my business, but had to start working on my business,
Hmm.
right? And so that was some stuff that I just, had to start learning how to read a balance sheet and P&L and started, all of these different things, right, that didn't have anything to do with a jump shot, but had everything to do with a jump shot, right? Because
Right.
I can't continue to teach basketball if the business isn't correct.
Right.
For
Okay.
me, I'm just thankful that I did not go into this, and I'm not saying that this is incorrect. I didn't even think I could make a career out of this, and that wasn't even a thought in my mind.
Okay.
I didn't jump into this saying like I'm gonna get paid to do this, and this is gonna be what I'm gonna retire on. And it wasn't something that I didn't think that I couldn't do. I just never even considered it.
Right.
It was just like I like working with some kids. Hell, I was cleaning cars at Enterprise during the daytime. I was just finishing up being a pro. Like, it was just something that was fun that I was passionate about. And as it continued to grow, I continued just to look at everything through the player, like what would be best for the kids, and what would be best for the kids. The byproduct of that is that was what was also best for the business. But at a certain point, I had to step back and kind of clean it all up
Right.
and align it all so that it started to make sense on every level.
Right. And I think that you just touched on a point that just has been in my mind lately is when athletes come home from playing overseas, when athletes finish their careers and they're trying to figure out what the heck to do with their life, how can this entrepreneurship, how can preparing yourself, trying to find your own thing, because as athletes we're different type of people, we have different type of mindsets. And sometimes it's harder for athletes to work for other people. At times it's harder for athletes to kind of sit back and work a 9 to 5. How would you give some advice to navigate that time period if you can remember it?
Get a mentor.
Okay.
Hmm. That's it.
Stop trying to figure things out on your own. You don't know what you don't know. All
Right.
you can teach yourself is what you know. Go get somebody, as your dad said, we would talk about business and that thing. And I'm thankful that the early on clients would pull me aside and I'd go to breakfast with them in the morning and then work a kid out 2 hours later. And so they would help me understand business,
Right.
right? And then I would go do what I was good at.
Right.
And so for me, you can't stop playing and then start deciding what you're going to do.
Mm-hmm.
You better start transitioning out, but that has to do with a lot about working on yourself. And I used to work with my trainer just on identity, right? Because there's certain things that go along with being an athlete. I'm used to dressing a certain way. I'm used to talking a certain way. I'm used to getting free shoes. I'm used to the gear. I'm used to that. Yeah, well, when you step out of that, that ain't how it goes, right? Like, so I had to have somebody work with me where honestly today I don't identify as an athlete. I really don't even remember it. To be honest, it was so long ago. I'm more identified, not even as a trainer anymore. I'm more identified as just a person that owns a business,
Right.
right? But I really had to work on myself. And I think people are more external with stuff and need to like look a little bit more internal. Like, hey, these are my weaknesses. These are my strengths. Here's the stuff that I'm good at. But you have to have somebody that that cares about you be honest with you and say like, nah, you ain't too good at that. Like you think you are.
Right.
That might not be your strength right there, right? So you need some help, right? And to this day, right, I still got people. I don't make a decision in a business standpoint without calling them, and it annoys them. They hate it. They can't stand it. I'll call them all day long until they answer the phone because I figured that maybe you was using the bathroom when I called, so I called back. Your ring was off, so I called again. I'm going to call until you answer the phone,
Right.
right? But I need an answer on this, and I'm not making a decision until these people in my circle that I trust uh, offer me some advice.
You know, one thing that my observation watching you progress, and one of the things I admire the most when it comes to building a business, you surrounded yourself with people that shared your same passion. And I've seen you go through different trainers, but
Sure.
I see where you are right now and the people that you have around you. You know, the greatest people have greater people around them, and you duplicated that. And that's something from a business standpoint, building a business, that it takes a lot of humility to do that. And I think that's a part of your formula, which may not only your program, but the people that you have around you. You have a facility in Indianapolis with Nick. Why don't you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, so we expanded in what was it 2015, right? And so my top guy at the time was Bobby and Nick, and Nick was passionate and eager, and I thought he could do it, right? And it looked like a good opportunity uh, for the business just to see if this is something that I have to teach myself. Like Matt Miller has to be there all the time for
Mm-hmm.
this to work, or is this something where there truly is a procedure, a way that we do things that can be replicated by somebody else,
Mm-hmm.
right? And so for me, I wanted to go as far away as we can where nobody knew who we were, and in a challenging of a market as possible, right? Like Indiana basketball, they could name the last Mr. Indiana's all the way through. I mean, hell, Shafer, you from it. Like, you know what I mean? Like,
Right.
know what it is there, right? So it is very, and so to come in from the outside is really, really difficult, right? So I wanted to see if it was, if we were really what we said we were, right? And Nick was crazy enough to take that on, and happy to say that it's been great. I mean, we just hired 2 full-time people there beginning of this year, so it's tracking the same way that it tracked here. Uh, so for me, I can legitimately say, like, yes, we have a business, we have a way we do things, we have policies, procedures, and we have results to back it. Now, I'm not guessing anymore on what we do and how we do it. It works. I've always said it ain't the only way, but it does work.
Mm-hmm.
Awesome.
No, and that's a big risk too. So,
There's a huge financial side to this stuff, and um,
but yeah.
that's part of it too, right? But that's the stuff that it's the same thing on why individual training and skill development is important because, as you said, when you go with the team, you're working on the team concept, but you
Right.
still have to work on yourself, right? So for me, I wanted to work with players and I was working on all that, but I still had to work on myself. I had to learn how to read a balance sheet, a
Mm-hmm.
profit loss statement. I had to get better with understanding financial discipline and all that stuff because you're absolutely correct. This stuff does not happen without money, but I had to go work on myself,
Right.
not just working on basketball,
Right.
right? And so because I was able to do that, then I could connect the two and ultimately make a bigger impact on the sport.
Right. No, I mean, you're
That's awesome.
dropping gems. You are because it's very important, especially for me as a young adult. It's just trying to figure out because at the end of the day, when you go through college or you spend time with sports for so long, there's little time for you to really dive into studying what you want to do after. Studying, you have an idea. We all go into school. We're like, we're going to go to business. We're all going to go to law. We get to school, basketball smacks us in the face. It's like, no, 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 sit down. You'll get to that later. Senior year comes, and you're like, how do I draft a resume? How do I draft a cover letter? How do I get into this type of stuff? And there's not a lot of resources at the end of the day for to help these young athletes that way. So,
No, I mean there's that, but there's good and bad with everything, right? Because the stuff that you were able to learn, or at least had the opportunity to learn, because everybody doesn't get it because you had the opportunity, but the different things of the time management and the discipline you know, it was the same stuff it's game day every time I step on the court, right? It feels exactly the same every time we get on the court with a player, right? So all the preparation that it took, right? All the stuff of being in the gym, all those long hours were just the same things now that I just put into the business, right? So yes, there is one side of it where maybe those hard skills, right? But in terms of the soft skills that you're able to obtain from athleticism, honestly, at this point, you could go get the hard skills, right? You could go read the books and learn all that stuff, but the going the extra mile, right? The being a team player, the going in through adversity, right? Learning all those things. I mean, you take a time like right now in business, man, this is game 6 and we're down right now. Like, are we just going to fold shop and say screw it? Like, well, there's a pandemic, so hey, I'm done, and we'll pick it up later. Or are we going to dig in a little bit now? But if you haven't had that instilled in you at some point, right? And we're just fortunate that basketball or sports is a way and a method that you can learn those lessons. There's other ways you can do it outside of sports for sure, but you have the ability to learn that stuff during sports, and that's the thing. That's one of my biggest gripes with parents. Let them fail, right? Like don't they can figure it out a little bit. Let them see what it's like to ride the bench some. Let them have that stuff because it's not about riding the bench right now. It's about being your age now, Faith, when things are a little bit difficult. Are you at home right now, or are you still kind of fighting, for yourself? And did you gain that stuff as you were growing up? Because you can't go back to being 13, 14. So, there's that stuff, but you can go read a book on the resume, but I can't tell you how to go in and have that extra level of effort, right? How to be that team player, how to have that level of discipline, how to step up and give your best all the time, no matter what, right? Those are things that you should have learned from being an athlete, not you specifically, but us as athletes that will ultimately, if you learn how to channel that, will make you successful.
Right. And it looks like one of our comments here gave us a cool fact, which is 75% of women CEO in the U.S. were college athletes at one time. So you're preaching right now. And then another question is your gym open now? And how do they get to a website? Share.
My gym is open for me and my staff. We are fortunately, unfortunately, we can't sneak one in, right? Like, we can't just say, like, all right, we're doing some workouts and stuff. We have to, obviously, this is about safety first, right? So it's not even about that anyway, right? This is about making sure that everybody's healthy and safe. We are abiding by the mandate, as we should. And also, we are a business in the rural community, and we want to make sure that we keep a correct relationship with city officials and the mayor and all that stuff. And we're doing a great job with this whole thing. But no, this right now, I think what takes the forefront is everybody needs to be safe and healthy. And we all need to make sure we get through this. So no, the gym is not open. So I come here every day and just walk by myself. We got, kind of workouts that we're doing with our athletes to stay connected with them. Obviously, we're going online like everybody else, but no, it's not. We're closed.
Right. Okay. So you do have online training and everything.
We do. Yep.
Okay. That's some of the more questions you're getting. You're popular today.
Oh, yes, we do.
Okay. But yeah, Matt, we really want to thank you for joining us today. I think it was a great discussion. Thank you guys, everyone, for joining us this Friday morning, 9 a.m. live, F3 Faith Family Focus.
Thank you, Matt.
If you could follow M14 Hoops at M14 Hoops. Do you have Twitter?
Yep, everything's at M14.
Google it, look it up, website. You don't want to miss being a part of this. It's a great movement right now, developing some great young men and women. So we're really excited about this series, everybody. We're going to come back to you on Monday with my own personal show and a great teammate of mine, Kyra Lambert from Duke University, and now point guard at Texas. Big time changes over there with Coach Shafer. So we'll be coming to you on Monday at 9 a.m. with another special guest. And we want to thank you guys all. Once again, this is Faith Family Focus, and we're using our faith as a vehicle to help everyone else strengthen the family core. Thanks, guys.
Have a great weekend.
Appreciate it. Is it off now?